Hello and welcome. Let's start with Morocco. The country is seeing its largest anti-government protests in years, and these are being led by Gen Z. Over the weekend, hundreds of young Moroccans took to the streets in at least 11 cities across the country, including the capital of Rabat, Casablanca, Marrakesh, Agadir, and Soukhsabit. Angry young Moroccans slammed the government over corruption and misplaced priorities. They clashed with the police and blocked a highway. The police arrested dozens of them. In the capital of Rabat, security forces also cracked down on protesters who were trying to gather in several places in the city centre. Now, protesters slammed the government for pouring money into international sporting events while neglecting health and education. This comes as Morocco is preparing to co-host the 2030 FIFA World Cup along with Spain and Portugal. In the run-up to the 2030 FIFA World Cup, Morocco is building at least 3 new stadiums and renovating or expanding at least half a dozen others. The North African nation is also set to host the Africa Cup of Nations later this year. Unlike past protests, which were driven by unions or political parties, these Gen Z protests were publicized largely on social media platforms such as TikTok and Discord, quite similar to the Gen Z protests that most recently rocked Nepal and have also taken place in African nations like Kenya and Nigeria. Opposition parties have condemned the crackdown on protesters. Morocco's human rights body has called the arrests a crackdown on free voices and restriction of the right to freedom of expression.
There was systematic violence against a group of young people who were demonstrating peacefully. However, the security apparatus responded violently, and there were numerous arrests. We condemned these arrests and deemed it unacceptable to take a security-oriented approach to the social demands of a group of young people.
Moroccans have been angry over social inequalities which have disproportionately affected young people and women. Recent reports of the deaths of 8 pregnant women at a public hospital in Agadir have further fueled public outrage. Authorities have denied the allegations of prioritizing World Cup spending over public infrastructure, saying problems in the health sector were inherited. Now, earlier this month, Morocco's Prime Minister Aziz Akhnouch has even hailed the government's major accomplishments in the health sector. But during that time, survivors of Morocco's 2023 earthquake also rallied in Rabat, demanding their houses to be rebuilt as a part of the government's reconstruction program. The devastating quake killed nearly 3,000 people. On the second anniversary of the disaster, dozens of protesters gathered outside Parliament, slamming the government over their exclusion from the reconstruction program.
I am demanding money to rebuild my house, which was destroyed by the earthquake, because I haven't received anything. Why am I being deprived of it? I am just a woman. Why am I not receiving aid like everyone else?
Young Moroccans are angry over their government's apparent indifference to their struggles. They have called for sweeping educational and public health reforms. Now, it remains to be seen if the Moroccan government can readjust its priorities in time or further face the rage of the fuming Gen Z protesters. And for more on this, we have with us Megan McDonald, journalist at Morocco World News, who is joining us live from Rabat, Morocco. Welcome to Firstpost Africa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Megan, what do the latest Gen Z protests tell us about the level of frustration among Morocco's youth, particularly regarding health and education? And how does this reflect the broader social inequalities in the country?
Yeah, so thank you. the number one thing that is super apparent in these protests over the weekend is that Moroccan youth are fed up and frustrated. We are seeing the youth calling out, saying that there's a misalignment of government priorities, focusing on spending billions on the stadiums upcoming with the AFCON as well as FIFA 2030 World Cup. And they are neglecting what are basically the basic human rights that are needed in the country. Both Gen Z 212 as well as Morocco Youth Voice are calling essentially for those basic rights on reform of both healthcare and also reform on both healthcare and also their basic demands within education. We're at a backdrop right now in which Morocco has around 7 medics per 10,000 inhabitants, and an even lower in Agadir, which is about 4. So what they're talking about is overcrowded hospitals, lack of equipment, and people dying under questionable conditions. There was a recent series of protests just earlier this month that covered, as we said before, there was outrage over the fact that 8 women had died in the maternity ward, and these youth are just feeling abandoned. So right now there is a lot of frustration, and the youth are basically calling on saying, hey, we understand that the government is putting all of these priorities here, and we want them to focus on our basic needs first.
Right. And does the government's heavy security response risk escalating tensions with the protesting youth instead of addressing their demands?
So, as with any civil justice protest and uprisings, basically what is going on is the youth from the very beginning said that this is going to be a peaceful protest. They put this in their original demand, saying that this is a citizen-led peaceful movement. And basically what we've seen on the ground is very much so that. So seeing the uptick of arrest over the weekend, yes, of course, that will continue to fuel these movements. They have already talked about how they are not standing down despite what they condemn as the arbitrary arrests. They have Gen Z 212 has also said that they will continue to be protesting and demanding their rights and their demands until they actually see what they're asking for, which is change and actual dialogue with the government, saying we hear you and we address your demands and we are going to go through with those reforms.
Right. Megan, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa.
Thank you.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
$36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion kakaljo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Kali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.